Last time we made a 1 year later video, it was on a top prospect from the USNTDP program. That player was Trevor Zegras, drafted 9th overall out of the Anaheim Ducks system, and he was a very, very good freshman for the Boston University Terriers, one of the best freshmen in the entire league, actually. Now, we'll get to today's video topic in a little bit, but a year ago when I was talking about Trevor Zegras for the Why I Want videos, etc., I always said that Zegras was the elite center behind Jack Hughes on the USNTDP team, especially early on. I wasn't really giving acknowledgement to the guy that we're going to be talking about today in this video, mostly because injuries kind of took that guy out of the picture. Lo and behold, we're 1 year later, and we're still talking somewhat about injuries to some capacity, but it doesn't take away from the skill, the talent, and the prosperity that this prospect has as a member of the LA Kings organization. Today, on 1 year later, we're going to be talking about Alex Turcotte, drafted 5th overall by the Los Angeles Kings at the 2019 NHL Entry Draft. He was the second player taken from the USNTDP in this entry draft behind Jack Hughes and ahead of Trevor Zegras, Matthew Boldy, Spencer Knight, Cameron York, Cole Caufield. Yeah, there were a lot of players from that team taken at that draft, but Alex Turcotte was the second one, and he was the third center taken off the board behind Hughes and Kirby Dach. That was a big surprise, by the way, Kirby Dach jumping up to 3rd overall. Turcotte was a guy who many people thought could actually go in that 3rd overall spot, because he was a guy from Chicago, Chicago was in the need for a center, and Turcotte was a guy who most people saw as a 3rd overall worthy talent. Even if it wasn't Chicago picking, there was a belief that Turcotte could be that number 3 guy. If the 3rd overall team wanted to go with a center rather than the defenseman Bowen Byram, then Turcotte was the guy that many people saw could be that player. But alas, he dropped down to 5, and this is where we are today. Turcotte in his draft year last year rose up probably towards the middle of the season. He missed a good portion of the beginning of the year with an injury, and as a result, people were looking at the guy behind Jack Hughes and Trevor Zegras and saying, yep, okay, Zegras, oh, that guy's really good, really, really good. He could be a potential top 7 player. But then Turcotte came back, and he put up a really good amount of numbers. 34 points in 16 games against USHL competition, and 62 total points in 37 games for the USNTDP's U18 team in its entirety. And all of a sudden, Turcotte was a guy who put his name on the radar. When people watched USNTDP games, they saw the quick, fluid, agile skating Jack Hughes, who could control a shift with ease anytime he stepped out there on the ice. They saw the elite playmaking and vision of Trevor Zegras, and the creativity that came behind every pass that he made. They saw the Swiss Army knife-like qualities out of a Matthew Boldy, a guy who was really good at pretty much everything, but who also had that extended ability to win board battles and engage physically. They saw Cole Caufield and how good he was at goal scoring, and then for Alex Turcotte, they saw the absolutely relentless two-way center who would not give up on any shift he played, and who was just an absolute workhorse at both ends of the ice. Not to mention his offensive prowess, the puck skills, the shot, the passing. Turcotte was a very, very highly skilled hockey player who just gave 120% at every shift he played. It's why scouts were super high on him, and it's why he rose so quickly after coming back to the NTDP after his injury. The projections saw Alex Turcotte as a potential number 1 center down the line, and even though a guy like Trevor Zegras may have had somewhat of a higher offensive ceiling, Turcotte was seen as the complete package who could just do everything. Which is why when Chicago Blackhawks fans looked at Alex Turcotte, they were like, yeah, you know, we got Jonathan Toews 3rd overall 13 years ago, and he's kind of the same kind of player. Why not go with Turcotte? But they went with Dach instead. Dach was pretty good this past season, so I'm not going to discredit that pick. But Alex Turcotte, a year later, has just wrapped up his first season with the University of Wisconsin Badgers in the NCAA. Now, before we get into how he actually performed, Turcotte was supposed to be, according to head coach Tony Granato back before the season started, paired up with Cole Caufield, who also ended up going to Wisconsin and who had the spotlight following him everywhere because he was a Montreal Canadiens prospect. He's a small guy, and he was noted as the best goal scorer of the draft. So there was attention for Cole Caufield and the Badgers, but always in the sidelines was Alex Turcotte because he happened to be there too, and a lot of people were like, you know what, no, they're going to play together. They're going to develop chemistry. They already have chemistry from the NTDP, and it's just going to be carried forward, right? Well, it wasn't. Turcotte mostly played on a line by himself, and he was the first-line center in most situations. However, he did suffer a knee injury this past season, which caused him to miss a few games. Yeah, injuries struck Turcotte again, and it's not really great to see. However, when Turcotte was in the lineup, he was pretty solid. He had 26 points in 29 games played, which, honestly, when you compare it to Caufield and Zegras, could be seen as underwhelming. Turcotte was tied with Matthew Boldy for the 11th best scoring NCAA freshman, while his former teammates in Caufield and Zegras were higher up there on that list. Not to mention Alex Newhook, who was taken 10 picks after Turcotte in the draft, was second best in freshman scoring, but at the same time, the University of Wisconsin Badgers were the worst team in their conference. Their coaching overall and the direction of the team wasn't really all too great. I will say, the deployment of some of these players and the situations that they were used in, while plentiful, it wasn't really to the best of their capacity, if I were to be completely honest. It's why, in my opinion, guys like Dylan Holloway honestly kind of had it unfair this past season, because if he was on a different NCAA team being used better, he probably would have had a better draft year. But alas, Turcotte was a guy who still put up the points despite playing on a pretty bad Wisconsin Badgers team. Furthermore, he spent some time at the World Juniors where he put up an astonishing, he didn't put up an astonishing number. He had 2 points in 5 games played. The US World Juniors team was really weird this season, and everybody kind of knows that. Zegras kind of exploded offensively because he had that one stretch where he got like 3 assists in a period or something crazy like that, 3 assists in a game, I believe. But some of the younger guys like Turcotte and Caufield in general, they just weren't used all too well at that World Juniors tournament. So I think it's kind of unfair to take a look at his World Juniors and say only had 2 points in 5 games, what a bust. Totally not what I'm going to say here, but it is something that did happen, so it is something that we're going to have to mention. After the season wrapped up for the University of Wisconsin Badgers, Alex Turcotte actually signed his contract with the LA Kings organization, making him a guy who most likely would have suited up in the AHL with the Ontario Reign to end off 2019-20, but because of the beer bug striking the way it did, that did not happen, and eventually, things just stopped. So now where we are with Alex Turcotte is waiting. We're pretty much just playing the waiting game here because Turcotte is signed for the LA Kings. He will most likely be working his way towards maybe making the team for 2020-2021, and with the LA Kings poised to drafting second overall, this could be a really good revolution in LA going into the next few years, with Gabe Vilardi already on that team, not to mention Turcotte and Madden potentially also going on there as well. This could be a huge explosion of offense for the LA Kings going into next season. If they get a Tim Stützle and they want to pair him up with Turcotte, then my oh my, you're going to have some really good working feet on that line, whichever line it is. But Turcotte, to me, going into next season, I honestly expect him to do pretty well. He's really responsible defensively, and that's been one of the traits that he's carried throughout his entire hockey playing career. Not to mention the puck skills, the shot, and the offensive IQ. It's all off the charts with this guy. To me, he's got legitimate number 1 center potential, and it's just getting over that hump of getting injuries every year and actually finding the right deployment that will allow him to unlock that for the long term. It's kind of scary how the LA Kings have so many guys who could have top 6 center potential in the guys that we mentioned, not to mention Jaret Anderson-Dolan and Kupari and Akil Thomas. There's a ton of center depth in that team, so it's going to be a very tough battle to try to fight for that center position, especially with Anze Kopitar still there. But for Alex Turcotte, going into the long term and going into next season, I'm honestly expecting a pretty good upwards development for him. If he doesn't play in the NHL, I would expect him to get at least just under a point per game in the AHL, if not a tad better. But He's a guy who I wouldn't be surprised if he made the NHL right away. He's just that good. And along with the other guys who are probably going to make their NHL teams right away, like Trevor Zegras, Alexis Lafreniere, maybe a Lucas Raymond, etc., it's shaping up to have a really, really nice Calder race for the 2021 season. That's what I'm looking forward to the most. But Alex Turcotte is a guy to me who should definitely be a part of that race 110%. And it's a staple as to just how valuable of a prospect he is, in my opinion. So, comment down below what you think about this video. What do you think about Alex Turcotte? Do you think he was the right pick at 5th overall? Or do you think the LA Kings made the wrong decision? Also, what do you think about the injuries that have slowed down Turcotte's game? Are these going to be a bigger obstacle coming down the future? Or is this something that he will recover from and he will bounce back from? In my opinion, it's the latter. I think he's definitely going to overcome that, but only time will tell. I hope you enjoyed this video. So, Troll99, and bye.